Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's Birth and Baby Talk. I'm Leanne Palmerston, and this gorgeous gal here is...
Backwards, Leanne. You're other right.
You got to remember that. Well, this gorgeous girl here is...
Meaghan Grant. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be back. It's been a while. The last time I was supposed to be here, I ended up in bed in the dark with a migraine. So didn't get to say goodbye to the disaster that was dumped 2020. But I am here today and I'm so excited. What people may not know about me is in my past life prior to being a doula, I actually worked in special education. And so I worked in childhood development and resource sort of special needs education and training, that sort of thing. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because this is where I started. This is, the realm of where I went when I graduated university and college and, first started my career. And it was as I worked with younger and younger kids, that was sort of where I transitioned into doula work, and I got into really being with families through sort of pregnancy and birth and that very early postpartum period instead of sort of the education later on. So it's sort of fun to be able to merge those two worlds for me today, especially because, Leanne, I'm sure you guys are the same. This is a topic we get tons of questions on, and people don't even necessarily realizing they're asking us questions about milestones and development when they ask us things like, when will baby sleep through the night? Or, can I sleep train my 3-month-old? These are all questions that we think of in terms of other, we think of them as in isolation as sleep or feeding issues or that sort of thing. But these are actually developmental milestones that babies need to reach. Not only that, there's milestones they need to reach before they can do these things.
Yeah.
So, for example, before a baby can sleep through the night, babies need to be able to consume enough calories in order to go through the night without eating again. In order to sleep train your baby effectively, your baby has to understand cause and effect. And babies aren't born knowing cause and effect. And this is where, all of those sleep training programs are like 12 hours and 12 weeks. I'm like, a baby doesn't know what's happening in that scenario. What you're really doing is training parents. Now, I will tell you from my time in early intervention and behavior therapy, training the parents is a lot of what happens. A lot of what we do when we talk about developmental milestones is really about giving parents tools to help support babies in their growth. Babies are going to develop regardless. Even babies that were not full term, that have difficulties, that have medical diagnoses, they may not meet their milestones on the same timeline as other babies, but they are still going to develop some or most of the developmental milestones that we expect to see in a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So what does all of that mean sort of like in the real world context of parenting? Your doctor or the pediatrician at the hospital checks your baby out after they're born. They do the heel prick test and then they send you on your way without an instruction manual. And these days without a ton of help waiting for you at home. And then approximately,
I just want to say like that in itself, like they do a little heel prick test, they chuck you out the door. When you buy a car, you get more information about how to maintain that thing than you do with the human you're taking home with you.
Getting my G license was harder than becoming a parent, right?
Yes.
I was tested more to drive a car than I was to raise a person. So yeah, you get sent home and you're not told what's normal. You're not told what to expect. You're not told, you might be told things to watch out for. Mm-hmm. Often you get told if a baby under 3 months of age has any fever whatsoever, do not pass go, do not collect $200, just go straight to the hospital. So sometimes you get a little bit of like, if things go bad, do this. but you don't get expect to see this behavior at this age, or expect a fussy period around this age. And so parents go home and it can feel like chaos. Mm-hmm. And it's because as adults, we don't realize how much is happening in a baby's brain. In the first year, 2 years, 5 years, absolutely. But in those first couple of weeks, your baby, think of like brand new baby puppies, eyes don't really see very well, ears don't really hear very well, very, very helpless. But still, there are things that we expect on a certain timeline. And Leanne, this is one of my favorites, 3s and 6s. 3s and 6s are growth spurts. So day 3 is often when your milk comes in. This can make for a fussy baby. Day 6 is when your supply starts to build. This can make for a fussy baby. Week 3 is when your baby is going to eat like it is going out of style, and you are going to feel like you are attached to your baby all the time. It's a growth spurt. Same thing happens at 6 weeks. Same thing happens at 3 months. Same thing happens at 6 months. Babies are really predictable with their growth spurts. And for the most part, for babies, or for parents of preemies, for the most part, these patterns hold with preemie babies. That is different at times for micro preemies, so babies born before 30 or 32 weeks. But when you've got those late term preemies, the 32 to 37 week babies, those babies do typically stick to that 3 and 6 cycle in terms of growth spurts. Obviously, every baby is going to be a little bit different. There's a variance on either side. But I will say, after 8 years of doing this, babies are surprisingly predictable with that 3.
Emotionally predictable.
I will show up at a shift and the parents will say, my baby, she's been really fussy all day, and I feel like she's just been on the boob. And I look at my, the date, and I go, well, yeah, she was 3 weeks old yesterday. And it's right on time. So we expect that. And although we don't think of physical growth necessarily as a developmental milestone, this growth actually has to occur for babies to achieve some of the other milestones. Mm-hmm. They need to be bigger. They need to be able to lift their heads a little bit, which means they need more muscle mass. All of these things sort of come together. And then weeks sort of 5 and 6, and then really around week 8, we have what are called wonder weeks. Now, I have the old book because this will tell you how old my children are. This is not like anymore. And in fact, I'm pretty sure this was a pass along from someone else whose kids were older than mine. So it's quite old. These days, get the app.
Yeah. When my kids see, this is how old my children are. Wonder Weeks was out of print, and a very popular website that I followed talked about the Wonder Weeks so much that the company actually started publishing the book again, because there was this one website created thousands of parents demanding copies from the publisher. So they started reprinting it, and then they developed the app. And as you said, we recommend you get the app. Like, the book's amazing, and you might want to have the book to make notes in, and that's great. But I feel like the book is like if you've ever read a self-help book or a business book that spends half of the written words in the book are there to kind of tell you why you should believe the author. Like, trust me. And here are 1,400 different people I've talked to that say the same thing. It works, it works, it works. Yes. So here, do this. And then the do this part is quite small. So what the app does is it takes out all that confirmation stuff and just gives you the straight up goods. So you will get notifications. You'll just get the information you need when you need it to give you the heads up on all this stuff. And now Meaghan's gonna explain all that for you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The book was great when I had it, because this was sort of pre-app. Wow, I just dated myself. Pre-app.
The book is amazing. It's the same information. You just get extra words with it.
Well, and I do find that the app is a little bit more updated, particularly in terms of its suggestions around activities and things to do to make the Wonder Weeks better. So first of all, let's define Wonder Weeks, because we keep throwing around this term. This is related to developmental milestones, but the Wonder Weeks are per the book and per the authors of the book, they're 12 sort of major leaps forward in terms of infant development that happen around specific ages. And the Wonder Weeks, it really gives you sort of the earliest point at which a skill might emerge, so that you're on the lookout for the behaviors leading up to that leap. And the example I always give people is one from my oldest. Quentin, who is now 8.5, was a very early physically active baby. He crawled and walked and did all of those things super, super early. In fact, he started crawling at 4.5 months, which was awful because he didn't have enough cause and effect to realize that crawling into the glass door over and over and over again would result in the same results. So there was a lot of moving him and redirecting. But I remember to this day, when he was about 4 months old, waking up to this blood-curdling scream coming from the nursery. So of course I panic. I go flying into the nursery. He's still asleep. Eyes are closed, but he's on all fours in his bed, rocking back and forth like he's trying to figure out how to move forward and crawling. So clearly in his sleep, his brain was going over and over and over this problem. And this is what babies do. And this is why these leaps become significant. Because anybody who has ever dealt with an overtired baby will tell you that overtired babies are difficult. They cry, they go off their food, they're not into eating very much. They might be clingy, but then they cry when they're in your arms. They might only want to be on you, and your baby that normally sleeps great in the bassinet under the crib suddenly won't sleep anywhere but on your chest. And you're going, I thought we solved this problem. You did. But you're going through a leap, and leaps kind of don't count in terms of expected behavior, unless you look at it that we expect their behavior to be off. And what's happening is their brains are going over and over and over this problem, and then suddenly it clicks and they make this giant leap forward. Now, especially in the early days, that 5 week, the first 2 leaps are week 5-ish and around week 8. And people sort of go, well, what can really be happening at that stage? They're still like puppies. Well, they are still like puppies, but this is when they become less like puppies. This is when they really start to create pattern recognition. And what a lot of families they realize later is one of the first patterns their babies recognize are their own faces. So this is where babies start to recognize their primary caregivers. This is where mom and dad or grandparents, sometimes if there's a doula involved from the very beginning, the doula is one of those faces too. And so this is where that pattern recognition of faces starts to come in. This is also for anybody who's seen babies get really excited over black and white images that have high contrast to them. Or I'm currently doing a postpartum contract, and there's a overhead light that this baby loves, and it's like a crystal chandelier. And we have discovered, now she's a little bit older now. She's not quite brand new, but she only will eat her bottle if the lights are at a specific dim. If it's too dark and she can't see the sparkles, she won't eat, and she fusses until I turn the light up. So this is a baby who has recognized the pattern of exactly what kind of lighting she wants when she's eating.
Yeah.
But she's fascinated by this light. And I used to joke, Quentin, we joked the chandelier in our apartment dining room, we named her Evangeline because it was his first girlfriend, because it's all he would look at. So this is a really common thing. Everybody's like, why is my baby staring at the overhead light? Your baby loves the overhead light. The overhead light best friend.
Or the junction. I always say, it's like, if you think your baby, like some people say, like, my baby maybe my baby knows that there's ghosts or something. And I'm like, no, 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 your baby's just staring at the corner of the seat where the ceiling meets the wall, because like one part is light and one part's dark. So they're looking at the juxtaposition of the light and dark, and that is fascinating to them.
Yes.
Their brain is like just calculating what that means.
Absolutely.
So it's so cool.
And all of that pattern recognition is part of that. These are those leaps. And so once baby has gone through those leaps, this is when you start to see babies socially smiling back. This is the milestone all new parents look forward to. One of the first ones that are tangible, that you can take a picture or a video of and send to family. Babies, I know we joke that babies, it's just gas. It isn't. It's a reflex. This is why babies smile in their sleep, that sort of thing. But once babies start to recognize your face, they start to recognize that there's a reciprocal arrangement between people. And again, this is a pattern. So you smile at baby. Around 8 weeks is when baby starts smiling back. And they're looking for that response, because again, they're developing these patterns of, I learn, I see this happening, I repeat what's happening, I get a response. So that pattern recognition is what's happening. And you're now also getting into sort of socio relationship building as well. Yeah. This is when I always tell parents, once baby starts reciprocally smiling, the fun game to do is stick your tongue out at them, because they will stick it out back and it turns into a really fun game. So that's, one of those things that you can do. And this is all of these suggestions around like ways of encouraging are all part of Wonder Weeks. This is why we truly encourage the app. I could probably sit on this channel for the next 4 hours and tell you all of the well, I probably have to look them up first. It's been a while, but I could tell you all of the milestones and, tons of activities and ways to meet those milestones and encourage them. But it's a lot of information and you don't need it all at once. Really, you only need it when it's relevant. So This is why I love the Wonder Week app. It gives you these sort of like, they call them leap alarms, where it warns you that something is coming. And I mean, let's be real. Who as a new parent doesn't need a heads up that the shit's about to hit the fan?
I would say forewarned is forearmed. If you know it's coming, then you can plan for it. You can recontextualize what's happening, and because I always tell our clients, like, I say, like, if your baby seems like they've turned into a kind of a jerk today, they're probably learning some little tiny skill in their brain. Like, we're talking about the big leaps. We're talking about the ability to decide to mirror a smile back to another human face, right? Like, that's a lot of complex stuff going on, but there's also all kinds of tiny little things that happen too. Like, like after a couple of days, the peripheral vision starts to open up and the depth of field starts to open up, and all of that information that's coming in through the eyeballs, right, has to get processed by the brain, and the brain has to get smarter and stronger in order to process and contextualize that information for itself. So I always tell people, like, it's great to get those alarms, because then you can go, all right, we got a rough day coming up. This baby is going to be cranky, is not going to want to settle or be able to settle for either sleep or feeds. They're going to feed really frequently. And it's not because you suck as a parent or that you don't have enough milk or any of those things. It's just baby is just, it's baby's under maintenance for the day. And when you know that, you can be like, today we're ordering everything. Like, we're getting breakfast, lunch, and dinner by Uber Eats. I'm calling my mom to come over and like clean my house for me, because I'm going to be kind of a mess and busy all day.
From now on, every time one of my kids is a bit of an asshole, I'm going to tell them that they're under maintenance for the day. That is probably the best line I've ever heard. So way to make my daily.
My job here is done.
But you are absolutely right, both about sort of those early first 5 weeks. This is where baby goes from like womb, where it's dark and muted in terms of noise, and warm to this big, wide open world, and it is big and cold and loud and bright and scary, and it takes time. This is honestly biologically why babies are born without a ton of depth perception, without a lot of peripheral vision, with sort of muted hearing, and it's because frankly it would be so overwhelming, babies would just totally lose their minds and freak out for the first 5 weeks.
If babies had all those skills on board already, their heads would be so friggin' large. We'd all have to have hips. Like we'd have to have like hips that could like unlock themselves and open up to allow.
My hips are big enough. I'll pass. But the other thing that I want to point out, because I have also had, so we love Wonder Weeks, obviously. This is something that we really think helps our clients. It helps new parents. It's a fabulous resource. It's something we recommend on the regular. But I also want to give the caveat that every baby is different. And this is also going to go double for when you go to your baby well check visits, because they will also do a developmental screening at some point during your baby's well check visits. And so there's always somebody sort of keeping an eye on your infant's development and making sure they hit the major milestones. That being said, some babies don't achieve milestones in the order we expect them to. There are plenty of examples of babies out there, for example, who go straight from like bum scooting or rolling to cruising and walking, and they skip the crawling step entirely. That's not an uncommon phenomenon. We see that in a lot of babies. They figure out how to get from point A to point B, and then they don't care how they got there. They just care that they can get there. So they don't really develop that crawling skill in the same order. That's not uncommon. That's a really obvious example, but there are so many when it comes to how babies grow and learn and develop. And so if you get to a Wonder Week, you get the sleep alarm and nothing happens. Or you get to a well check and you're checking everything off and you get to that one and you're like, oh, my baby doesn't do that. Don't freak out. Again, this does not mean you are a terrible parent. You are not, missing your baby's needs. You are not supporting your baby. Your baby isn't at risk of falling behind. This is just human beings are not robots. We don't do things on a precise schedule. It's not quite like those early weeks of pregnancy where like things happen on a very specific day, like day X, the kidney forms. That doesn't happen when it comes to development. Some of it is about the things they're exposed to. Some of it is about individual child preferences. I'll go back to Quentin. Quentin did all of these big, he crawled at 4.5 months and he walked at 10 months. It was awful. At least we were in an apartment, so we didn't have stairs to deal with, but it was terrible. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. He got into everything, but he had shitty fine motor skills. He didn't like to pick up and grasp. Everything was in a fist. Nothing was a pincer grasp. And I'll say that even now, 8.5 years later, he really doesn't like to do things like print or color or do a lot of those fine motor skills. Video games he'll play till the cows come home. But, writing and drawing, not so much. So he was this child where every time we went through the developmental checklist, he was light years ahead when it came to gross motor skills. But he was at par or even a little behind sort of the curve when it came to fine motor. And that was just his personality and his preferences and his skills. Just like now, I'm probably not your best bet when it comes to gross motor stuff. Adults are the same. We all have skills that we have focused on and concentrated on. And while it's a little bit different because these are like functional life skills versus just like living skills and being able to differentiate colors and climb stairs, the same rules apply that babies are going to naturally do activities and actions that they both are interested in and find achievable.
Yeah.
So if something feels too hard for a baby, they're more likely, honestly, to go for the skill that they know. This is why, again, we come back to the Wonder Weeks app where it has all these suggestions on ways to improve those leap weeks and on ways to really encourage those emerging skills. This can be really helpful because it really can help you sort of guide your baby towards all of the skills that they need to learn.
Yeah.
They will learn it on their own eventually, I promise, if you are not like setting up a Montessori school in this, one of the spare rooms of your house and like going all over with that. That's okay. Your baby is not going to be at a disadvantage. I guess for me, the biggest sort of message when it comes to developmental milestones and the Wonder Weeks is they are normal. Mm-hmm. Your baby's going to be probably not their normal, cheerful, happy selves. If you have a generally not happy, cheerful baby, you are going to have an even less happy, cheerful baby. And I will, I acknowledge that when you already have a challenging baby, these leaps can make it even more difficult. Often those babies are the super independent ones. So they're the ones that don't want your help. And they get very angry if you try.
Yeah.
Leanne's like, I know those babies. I've seen those babies. The ones who freak out if you try to feed them because they want to do it themselves. That, again, that's another thing to know with these leap years or leap weeks is babies sometimes really want to do these things on their own. Mm-hmm. That independence itself is a developmental milestone. We want to see babies get into that independent phase, as challenging as it can be for us as parents. So really just sort of understand that these are parts of the ebbs and flow of parenthood and of infanthood. These are the challenging moments that lead to the big breakthroughs, but not everybody is going to do it on the same schedule. Not every baby is going to do it in the same order. And as Leanne said, there are lots of little skills that continue to happen and grow and develop between these big leaps. These big leaps are when we often see and expect major behavioral changes, but those little skills that they continue to develop in between these major leaps are still really building towards those big leaps and are still building towards all of the skills that babies need to grow and develop. And they become the foundation of bigger skills. People don't realize that 8-week pattern recognition phases, that's actually a foundational building block for math. That pattern recognition, spatial awareness, features, all of those things are actually the building blocks of learning more complex math as your baby grows and starts to understand numeracy.
Cool.
So, it's when you really break these leaps down and you look from the skill as it develops in the moment to where it goes down the road, you really do start to see these connections between seemingly random developmental milestones in that first 36 months and how they then impact academics and social, emotional relationships and that sort of thing down the road. Yeah. So, it's why it's a good idea to pay attention, to be aware, and always, if your baby is missing milestones and is in, catching up at the next appointment, that's when it is time to talk to your baby's doctor. Most babies will catch up. Most babies, if they don't have it at their 4-month appointment, they'll have it at their 6-month. But there are some babies who won't. And the earlier, I'll be real, the earlier you get on wait lists for services, yes, the earlier you are going to get services. And so, you don't want to wait too long past a baby missing a milestone. Sort of, I always say 1 or 2 doctor appointments. After that, doctors will often get a little concerned as well. Mm-hmm. The one caveat I'll give to that is speech. Speech, because it's such a diverse time in terms of when speech emerges in different kids, that it is one that if your baby doesn't have the number of words, usually it's at their 2nd birthday where pediatricians really start to sort of examine what's happening. Often we see that these kids by 2.5, their language has exploded. unless you've also seen other sort of missed milestones. But speech is one of the weird ones that it can seem like it's quite delayed, and then out of nowhere your child is speaking in full sentences. It's sort of the exception, also caveat, also weird situation when it comes to infant development. But it's also the one that people recognize as a problem the earliest.
Yeah.
People are more likely to recognize that their baby isn't speaking than the fact that they can't reach across their body. Most people don't think of that as a developmental milestone, but actually it's a huge developmental milestone that early interventionists get really excited about. We're like, bilateral movement! So, it's the things that people think of as developmental milestones aren't always the biggest, most important ones that we watch for. Sometimes there are smaller ones that really lead to those bigger ones. But, if your baby's missing milestones, don't freak out. If your baby continues to miss milestones, still don't freak out, but talk to the doctor about it, because if your baby does need some early intervention, it's much better to get on a list and get some help earlier rather than later.
I think for me, if I were to give any sort of caveats or guidance to families as they're thinking about these things, is like what I'm kind of a hippie at heart, and I'm a huge fan. Really? Right. And I feel like I have like one hair that keeps touching my lips, so I don't have a Coke habit, I promise, unless we're talking about Coca-Cola. But yeah, no, it feels like something's touching my face all the time. I'm sorry. No, I'm a huge fan of simple, proven stuff. And I think a lot of parents, when they start to learn about things like milestones and infant development and stuff, they start to think how they can hack that to like create like a super baby. And I promise you, if you never ever like hold your phone in front of your baby so they can watch moving black dots on the screen as a kind of like developmental exercise for them, they will still develop exactly the way they're supposed to. So the thing about these developmental milestones and what's going on with the baby's brain is, your baby was born with a blueprint that's called DNA, right? So they're born with this blueprint that is going to kind of outline most of their developmental stuff. And then the environment that they live in and the interactions that they have with caregivers can sort of make sure that blueprint gets followed in the right way. But the way we as caregivers do it is merely to talk often to our babies, let them like have social interactions, let them kind of lie on the ground on their tummies and like look at the world. They don't need like fancy little gyms. They don't need a lot of stuff. You can just like throw a sock at the baby and let the baby grab the sock and try to put it in their mouth. Like that is as effective as buying a $20, what do they call those? A baby genius or baby Einstein toy, like all that kind of stuff that's designed to, like encourage infant development and stuff. All of that stuff that's icing on the cake. And I promise if your baby is developing normally, you can't overdevelop them like a bodybuilder can make themselves bigger and stronger, right? Like your baby is just going to grow at the pace they need to and hit all of the developmental milestones as intended. So, because I think a lot of people are just like, we're overachievers, I get it. I understand. And there's so much stuff out there that's aimed at parents to say, get this special bottle and your baby won't have gas pains. Buy this black and white book and your baby's like optical nerve will get stimulated properly. Like, you could just sit and watch TV together and talk to your baby while, like that's the same thing kind of, like there's simple, normal, stuff that's just based on you and the baby and a floor, you know, like
environment. So I hope the client I'm working with doesn't mind that I'm going to tell this story. They have a cushion, like a throw pillow on the couch in their living room that is like a cream colored background with a navy bluish repeating pattern. And it's guaranteed to make this baby smile every time. It's a pillow. They had it anyways. They didn't buy it, you know, and I'm going to say this baby has like multiple gyms to lie on and toys and books and very involved parents and, you know, a doula team from the beginning. Like, this is not a baby that is not being stimulated and is not developing normally. She absolutely is. And what she loves is this pillow. You don't have to go out and spend a ton of money. It doesn't have to be a big production. Now, there's also nothing wrong with going out and buying things that will take the guesswork out of it for you. There's that subscription box, the Lovery, I think it is.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
They send you like a box at each sort of stage of development with activities specifically designed for that age. Honestly, for new parents that are exhausted and haven't slept through the night in like 6 months, it's a great option because it does take work out of it. It's really designed for that age group. And it's, you know, it's an easy, tangible way of moving forward with those milestones in that development. But it's not required. It's not needed. Your baby isn't at a disadvantage if you don't do those things. It's kind of like when I say to parents, I promise you, when you drop your child off for the first day of kindergarten, you will not be able to tell which ones were best breastfed and which ones were formula fed. You will not be able to tell which ones had all the bells and whistles and gears and gadgets, and you won't be able to tell the ones who didn't, because kids will always end up in approximately the same place.
Exactly.
Because they're really just developing basic living skills in those first couple of years. This isn't academics. This is speech and learning how to use utensils and climb stairs and bilateral walking upstairs. So, you know how kids do 1 foot and then and that's how actually doing a bilateral, that's a developmental milestone. You know, these are all things that we don't think of, but these are the building blocks and foundations for life and living and how we move through our environment for the rest of our life. That's what they're developing primarily in that.
Exactly. I call it when I'm talking to my clients, just becoming human. Like, they're literally becoming human. They're turning from newborn to like a more fully developed human who is changing and transforming over time. And you can't become extra human. Like, that's not a thing yet.
I mean, my baby without terrible.
So yeah, like, I mean, if you want to do flashcards with a 3-week-old baby, go for it. But do it because it's super fun for you to do it. And maybe it makes your baby like laugh or do something that delights you. Don't do it because you think you're going to somehow speed up their development or they're going to just be extra smart when they're a 3 or 4-year-old. Like, that's really not a thing. Because by the time they're that old, they're learning all those things at the appropriate times that, you know, like say a flashcard of be bear. Like, well, just hold up the teddy bear and say be bear. Bear. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. It doesn't take a lot. It's really, you know, use the things in your environment. I guess the biggest takeaway is be aware, because if nothing else, it saves your sanity. It's really hard as a parent to not know why your baby is fussy and not know what to do to help them. And even if there's nothing you can do to make it better, it's always nice to know at least what's happening. There's comfort in knowing this too shall pass. This is a brief moment and a brief stage, and it's not indicative of something bigger. It's just a developmental leap. So, you know, it really is, be aware. just for your own sake of peace of mind. But also the suggestions in the Wonder Week app really are helpful. Again, you don't need to buy a bunch of stuff to make them work. You can find things in your environment. And it really just gives you, it's not just ideas for the development, it's ideas of things to do with your baby as your baby starts to have these longer awake periods. You know, a lot of parents are like, okay, my baby is awake now, but I mean, they're 4 months old. What do we do? It's not like we're going to go like get on a roller coaster. So, you know, it gives you ideas of things to do because it's been a long time since a lot of us got down on the floor and discovered the joy of just banging two bottles together.
Exactly.
It's been a while since most of us did that. But for a baby, that's could be the most exciting part of their day is two empty plastic bottles to bang together. Or a wooden spoon and a metal bowl. That's always a fun one. Loud earplugs are a gift. But, you know, it doesn't take a lot for a baby to really sort of grasp concepts. And the simpler, the better. As you said, Leanne, keep it simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Meaghan. What a great topic today. I love this one. Like you, we'll probably talk about it all day.
Although after your last spiel, I feel like we need to do an episode on like overhyped baby products.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought like I did a couple of weeks ago, for those watching at home, we did an episode on the slacker mom tells millennium moms to chill. And so we cover some of this stuff, like just like, hey, chill out. Like this will all happen. Your baby will grow up to be a fucking genius. And like, you know, like you don't have to do anything special to get them there, right? Like that's the beautiful thing about like babies. They all kind of have potential in them as they're growing, and they're all geniuses at the same time. But yeah, the Wonder Weeks app is fantastic for giving parents a heads up because I feel like, and I think we're going to be doing a show coming up in a month about growth spurts, like digging into what they look like and how to get through them, why exactly they're happening, what's going on behind the scenes kind of thing. So, because like when we see these growth spurts / leaps / Wonder Weeks, what we're seeing is something that's supposed to happen. And a lot of parents can misinterpret it as a problem with their baby, a problem with their parenting or their nurturing of their baby. And it's supposed to happen, which is pretty cool. So when you know it's going to be happening, that can sort of help you ride the tough days a little easier. Which again is a big deal for me. I love that for my clients to help them find ways of coasting through some of the rough stuff. So it's not as rough on you. And yeah. And I think next week's topic too is going to be a great natural extension of this. We're going to be talking about how to know your baby is ready for solids.
Exciting.
I know. I love this
one of my favorite topics.
So much. And I think later in the month, if I'm not mistaken, let me just look at the schedule here.
Okay, I'm doing the week leading into Valentine's Day because we're going to talk about oxytocin, the love hormone.
That's right.
Because I had to be super stereotypical and cheesy. It was just too perfect.
Yeah, we've got a great month coming up. We've got knowing when baby's ready to eat solids. We're talking about oxytocin, the love hormone, and then we're going to be talking about the challenges of having multiple babies. And then finally, we're finishing the month out with one of our favorite guests, Cree Lembeck, is coming back to talk about how to recognize when you might be having a postpartum mood disorder. So that's going to be great. And so next week with knowing when babies are ready for solids, we're going to actually also have another show in the middle of March about baby-led weaning. So you're definitely going to want to be coming back, folks, because these topics are just going to going to give you all the information you need to sort of get through early parenting and find your way through with confidence. And of course, as doulas, that's our goal for you, is to help you find your way through parenting with confidence. So thank you, folks, for coming yet again to Birth and Baby Talk. If you have a question about anything we talked about in today's episode, if you want some links or information, please leave us a comment and we'll get right back to you. If you have a topic that you want to dig into and learn more about, let us know that, and we'll put that on the schedule. And then
if you are located in Hamilton or surrounding areas, the GTA or Ottawa, we have agencies and doulas who are ready to support you. We are continuing to do birth support when we are able. There are a very small number of hospitals in the province that are allowing doulas, but we are also able to provide virtual and home birth support, as well as early labor support. If you just want to stay at home as long as possible and you are looking for a doula who can help you do that, we also have that service available. And our postpartum services are fully operational. We are allowed to be working during this current lockdown. There are doulas who are waiting, and we have very stringent COVID protocols in place to help keep both our teams and all of our clients and their families safe. So if you are expecting or you have recently had a baby in any of these areas and you are looking for support, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are more than happy to help you get that set up. And all of our doulas have, tons of information and are available to help guide you through all of this as well, just as we are.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, and sign up for our newsletter.
Yes.
I'm going to leave the link in the comments so you can sign up. If you can get signed up today, then you're going to get tomorrow's newsletter. It goes out Thursday mornings. And this week, we're going to be having a link to the list of child development milestones that your family practitioners, midwives, doctors are going to be looking at when they're helping track your baby's growth and development. So you can sort of keep an eye and see what is going to be sort of expected, what is normal, or the range of normal for each age range over the first couple of years. So I think these are really great, and they can help parents sort of keep in mind all the really cool things that their baby is learning in each stage of development over that first year or two. So get signed up to the newsletter. And then finally, thanks. We really appreciate you guys coming and watching our little shows here. You make doing this job so much fun and so satisfying. So we'll see you again next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.